Hey, welcome to another video. So today we're going to be going into everything there is to know about Sir Duncan the Tall. But before we begin, please be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, join the Sith Citadel Discord, links in the description, and consider becoming a join member or sending a super thanks if you wish to further support the channel. Otherwise, let's jump straight into it. Duncan the Tall was a knight during the reign of King Daeron II, Aerys I, Maekar I, and Aegon V Targaryen. Raised as Dunk in Fleabottom, he became the squire of a hedge knight, Sir Arlen of Pennytree. Duncan then traveled the Seven Kingdoms as a hedge knight himself, with the young Prince Aegon called Egg as his squire. The early exploits of Duncan Egg are chronicled in A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, the new TV show coming out soon. Duncan's personal arms were a green shooting star above an elm tree proper on Sunset, but he also briefly used while competing as a mystery knight in a tournament, the sigil of an unknown knight, a hanged man swinging grim and gray beneath the gallows tree. Duncan was an inch shy of 7 feet tall. He had thick shaggy hair which sun-streaked in the summer. After the events of Standfast in 211 AC, he had a dagger scar in his cheek. Dunk was strong and quick, and was taught jousting and swordplay. He was better with a sword than with a lance, and even better with an axe or a mace. Duncan had a humble personality, and frequently thought of himself as thick-headed, recalling how Sir Arlen had often said Dunk the Lunk, thick as a castle wall, and referred to him as slow and archerous. Duncan's earliest memories were of living as a street urchin in Fleabottom slums of King's Landing. His closest friends went by the names of Ferret, Raffe, and Pudding. By his own admission, they were little monsters, with Duncan at the time still known as Dunk, the worst of all. Sometimes they would sell, or even dump pieces of meat of dubious origin to the local pot shops that made the balls of brown. Dunk was an orphan, who never knew either of his parents. It may be that he was a bastard. He believed his father might have been a criminal, and once hoped to someday go to the north and eventually the Wall, where he could perhaps meet the tall old man who looked like him. Sir Arlen of Pennytree, a hedge knight, took Dunk as his new squire 3 or 4 years after the death of his previous squire, Roger of Pennytree, during the final battle of the First Blackfire Rebellion in 196 AC. He found the young Dunk aged 5 or 6 in King's Landing chasing a pig and took him on. Arlen raised Dunk, and together they traveled all over Westeros except the north. Though they never visited Pennytree, where Arlen was from, they served Lord Leo Tyrell at Highgarden during one of the first few years that Dunk served Arlen. Visiting King's Landing in 205 AC, served Lord Florent for half a year, and joined Lord Dondarrion in the hunt for the Vulture King, both in 206 AC, and visited Lannisport in 208 AC, among other places. As well, Duncan accompanied Arlen when he was one of several knights hired by a Dornish merchant, who wanted to travel from Lannisport to the Prince's Pass in Dorne. Dunk learned sword fighting from Sir Arlen, though he still recalls his fighting experience from Fleabottom as well. Ever since the first time that Arlen had let Duncan hold a sword, Duncan had dreamt of becoming a knight of the Kingsguard. Dunk was not exactly sure how old he was because he grew up as an abandoned orphan in the streets of King's Landing, and his usually large height from a young age made it difficult to guess. By 209 AC, he loosely thought he must be about 16 or 17 years old, which would place his birth somewhere between 191 and 193 AC. In 209 AC, a tournament was to be held at Ashford in the Reach. Sir Arlen of Pennytree died on the way to the castle, however, and after Dunk had buried the hedge knight, he decided to compete in the tournament at Ashford Meadow in Arlen's stead. At an inn along the way, Duncan met a drunken man who claimed to have dreamed about him, and who became distraught at the sight of him. Dunk also met a bald-headed boy who begged Dunk to be allowed to become his squire when Duncan left. Duncan refused, left, and shortly after arrived at Ashford. Duncan made camp, and that evening discovered the bald boy from the inn at his camp. When the boy assumed that Dunk's name was short for Duncan, Dunk agreed, calling himself Sir Duncan the Tall for his height, and because it sounded powerful. The boy claimed to be called Egg, and said he came from King's Landing, causing Dunk to believe the boy was an orphan from Fleabottom, just like he had been. Because he did not have a squire, Dunk accepted Egg as his squire for the duration of the tournament. That night in their camp under an elm tree, Dunk saw a green falling star, which he believed was lucky. One of the tournament grounds, Duncan was forced to sell Sweetfoot, one of his horses, and Arlen's old armor in order to buy armor of his own from Steely Pate. He met a puppeteer named Tanzel, who was performing at a stall on the tournament grounds. The day after Dunk's arrival, he went to register for the tournament, which required knighthood to participate. Identifying himself as Sir Duncan the Tall, Dunk took Plummer, Lord Ashford's steward, how Arlen had knighted him before his death. Some of his thoughts and actions, as well as other facts, however, suggest that his tale is not entirely true. Plummer suggested that Duncan find someone to vouch for him and return the next day. Unable to find anyone, Duncan returned to the castle the next day, where he accidentally interrupted Prince Baelor and Prince Maekar Targaryen, who were occupied with the missing Princes Daeron and Aegon, two of Maekar's sons. After Duncan explained his problem to the princes, Baelor recalled jousting against Arlen years before and vouched for Duncan, allowing his participation. Since Dunk's shield displayed the winged chalice arms of the late Sir Arlen, Baelor said he could not bear the sigil himself, as he was not Arlen's trueborn son. Dunk paid Tanzel to paint over the shield with a new design, a green shooting star above an elm tree at sunset. A sunset because Sir Arlen liked them, an elm tree for the tree by his camp, and a shooting star for the lucky one he had seen. When Tanzel was attacked by Prince Aerion Targaryen, Duncan rushed to her defense, attacking the prince in the process. When Aerion's guards intervened, Egg protected Duncan from further harm by revealing his identity as Prince Aegon. Duncan was arrested and brought to the castle, where Prince Baelor informed him how Prince Daeron had claimed to be his father, and that Aegon had been kidnapped by Robert Knight, while Aerion was twisting the puppeteer story into treason. Due to the lies of both Aerion and Daeron, Maekar became furious with Duncan. Baelor was forced to allow Aerion a trial, and Aerion demanded a trial of 7. With help from Aegon, Duncan found 6 allies: Sir Robin Rysling, Sir Humphrey Harding, Lord Lionel Baratheon, Sir Humphrey Beesbury, and newly knighted Ramin Fazaway, and Baelor. Aerion was supported by Daeron, Maekar, and Sir Stephen Fossaway, Sir Willem Wilde, Sir Donald of Duskendale, and Sir Ronald Craighall, the latter 3 being knights of the Kingsguard. To his surprise, Duncan discovered that the small folk supported him, as he remembered his vows as a knight, protecting the weak and defending the innocent, by protecting Tanzel. During the combat, Duncan eventually found himself facing Aerion one-on-one, and he managed to best Aerion by using his strength and his fighting skills from Fleabottom. Duncan forced Aerion to yield, as Aerion had already faked his defeat, as he had promised Duncan the day before. Duncan was cleared free of all charges. Humphrey Beesbury was slain in the fighting, and Humphrey Harding died from his wounds in the night. Prince Baelor was mortally wounded as well by his own brother, Prince Maekar, leaving Duncan feeling extremely guilty. Maekar offered Duncan a place at Summerhall, so his son Aegon could squire for Duncan. While Duncan agreed to take the prince as a squire, he insisted on remaining a hedge knight. Convinced it would teach Aeg humility, Maekar agreed. Duncan and Aegon traveled to Dorne, passing through the Prince's Pass and eventually reaching Vaith, where Duncan accidentally insulted Lady Cassella Vaith, the first highborn woman he had ever met. During the crossing of the desert, Duncan's horse Chestnut died, and he and Aegon had to ride double on Thunder. While in 209 AC and 210 AC, the Great Spring Sickness ran its course through Westeros. Duncan and Aegon were able to avoid encountering this plague as they were in Dorne, one of the 2 places where the plague had not come. Duncan and Aegon took a poleboat down the Greenblood to Plankestown, where they took passage on the galleys White Lady to Old Town. Aboard the ship, Duncan had his first experience of combat at sea, when he helped repel some raiders. In Old Town, Aegon's brother Aemon measured Duncan, and found he was an inch short of 7 feet. At some point, Duncan and Aegon were gifted a mule, Maester by one of Aegon's brothers, presumably Aemon. Duncan and Aegon took service with Sir Eustace Osgrey, a poor and broken-landed knight at Standfast in the Reach. Also employed was Sir Bennis of the Brown Shield, an old acquaintance of Duncan from his time with Arlen. Duncan and Bennis discovered the peasants of the widowed Rohain Weber, Lady of Colmote, had dammed the Chequy water. Bennis provoked Rowan by cutting the cheek of one of her peasants. Duncan and Bennis began training a small levy of peasants for Eustace. Since Eustace refused to travel to Coldmoat, Duncan went to the castle to try and reason with Lady Weber. Though sexual tension charged their meeting, Rowan refused Duncan and told him about Eustace's support of Daemon Blackfyre during the Blackfyre Rebellion. Shocked by the revelation, Duncan attempted to leave Eustace's service, but a fire in the nearby woods caused him to suspect that Rowan had already started her campaign against Eustace. Duncan knew that the battle was a lost cause. He disbanded Eustace's Maegor levies, but promised to be by his side when he faced Rowan. Meeting with her forces, Duncan cut his own cheek, claiming he was the one who attacked Rowan's peasant. Lady Weber and Sir Eustace refused to back down, however, and they decided upon trial by combat. Duncan represented the elderly Eustace, and Rowan's companion was her overbearing castellan, Sir Lucas Inchfield. Duncan's wrestling ability compensated for his lack of swordsmanship, and he managed to kill Lucas Long Inch, though Duncan received major wounds himself and almost drowned in the stream in which they had been fighting. After recuperating, Duncan discovered that Eustace and Rowan had settled their differences and decided to marry. Duncan felt rejected, but was confronted by Rowan shortly before he left. He took one kiss from Rowan and cut off a length of her signature braid as a keepsake, after which he and Aegon took their leave. Duncan and Aegon traveled to the Riverlands, where they visited Stony Sept. Though they had been on their way to take up service with Lord Baron Stark against the Ironborn on the northern coast, they changed their destination after a chance meeting on the road. They encountered a group led by Gorman Peake, Lord of Starpike, Lord Alan Cockshaw, and a hedge knight named Sir John the Fiddler. The latter invited Duncan to attend the wedding of Ambrose Butterwell, Lord of White Walls, to the daughter of Lord Frey, Lord of the Crossing, stating that the victor's prize at the celebratory wedding tournament at White Walls was to be a dragon egg. Though the company traveled on without him, Duncan decided to go as well, and he befriended the fellow hedge knights, Sir Kyle the Cat, Sir Maynard Plum, and Sir Glendon Ball, on his way to White Walls. At White Walls, Aegon became suspicious about the intentions of the wedding, and he informed Duncan that the majority of the nobles present had fought for House Blackfyre during the Blackfyre Rebellion. Duncan later had an encounter with John the Fiddler, who told him that Duncan had appeared to him in a dream, in which Duncan had worn all the white armor of his Kingsguard. The Fiddler said his dreams always come true, stating that he had dreamed his brothers dead once, and though they had not believed him, they had died. The Fiddler also informed Duncan that he had dreamed about a dragon hatching from an egg at White Walls. Duncan entered the joust as a gallows knight, a mystery knight named for the hanged man's sigil on his shield, which he had brought to replace the one destroyed by the Long Inch, but had not had time to have painted with his own arms. Duncan was defeated in his first tilt by Sir Ulthor Underleaf, who confessed that someone had attempted to bribe him to kill Duncan in the final tilt. While searching for Aegon, Duncan ran into Glendon, who had been far more successful than Duncan during the tournament, and invited him to come north after the tournament, which Glendon declined. Glendon told Duncan that Lord Peake had offered him a place at Starpike, on the condition that Glendon would let Fiddler win. Glendon had refused, angering Gorman. Duncan next ran into the Fiddler and began to realize John's true identity, as well as the tournament had been rigged to make the Fiddler victorious. Lord Peake accused Glendon Ball of stealing the dragon egg, and the youth was imprisoned. When Duncan attempted to intervene, Alan Cockshaw pulled him back, telling Duncan to follow him if he wanted to find Aegon. Alan attempted to kill Duncan out of jealousy for the attention the Fiddler had shown Duncan. Though injured, Duncan threw Alan down a well to drown, an action witnessed by Maynard Plum. Maynard helped Duncan see to his injuries and informed him of Aegon's location. Aegon falsely told Lord Butterwell that he and Duncan were spies sent to investigate the tournament, and that his father, Prince Maekar Targaryen, was on his way with an army. Frightened, Ambrose pled for his innocence. Sir Tomard Heddle attempted to seize Aegon in the Sept, but was slain by Duncan in the combat that ensued. Duncan ordered Aegon to ride for Maidenpool, and he confronted the Fiddler, calling him by his true name, Daemon. Duncan accused Lord Peake of bribing the contestants in Daemon's favor, and of falsely charging Glendon with the theft of the dragon egg. Furious about the accusations, Daemon challenged Glendon with a joust as a means of trial by combat. Glendon defeated Daemon Blackfyre easily early in the morning, and moments later a loyalist led by Lord Brynden Rivers, the Hand of the King, arrived at White Walls. Daemon was arrested, and those who had supported him executed or punished, causing the Second Blackfyre Rebellion to be suppressed before it had even begun. Lord Brynden allowed Duncan and Aegon to continue their travels, and hinted as to how the dragon's egg had been stolen, leading Duncan to realize the involvement of the dwarves who had performed at the wedding. An unknown amount of time after White Walls, Duncan and Aegon visited Winterfell. In late 233 AC, after Aegon had ascended the throne as Aegon V Targaryen, Duncan escorted the king's brother, Maester Aemon, to Eastwatch by the Sea, where Aemon was going to join the Night's Watch. Duncan eventually joined the Kingsguard. While it is unknown exactly he took his vows, the first known mention of him as a Kingsguard knight is in 236 AC. In 236, Sir Duncan fought the Fourth Blackfyre Rebellion and personally slew Daemon III Blackfyre and the Blackfyre Pretender. In 239 AC, when Prince Duncan Targaryen broke his betrothal to Lord Lionel Baratheon's daughter and married a common-born girl known as Jenny of Oldstones instead, the enraged Lionel renounced his fealty to the Iron Throne. Duncan served as King Aegon V's champion in a trial by combat, in which he bested Lionel, thereby ending his short rebellion. In 252 AC, or 253, Duncan, by then Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, participated in a winter tournament at King's Landing, where he was defeated by a 16-year-old Barristan Selmy. In 259 AC, Duncan perished along with King Aegon V and Prince Duncan, among others, in the tragedy at Summerhall. Little is known about the events of the tragedy, but it seems that the Lord Commander's valor saved some of the survivors from dying in the Great Fire that consumed Summerhall. So what did you guys think of Sir Duncan the Tall? Please let me know in the comments down below. If you haven't already, please be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, join the Sith Citadel Discord, links in the description, and consider becoming a join member or sending a super thanks if you wish to further support the channel. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video.